Well, I've done an awful lot on the Armed Services Committee. Most recently, saved the C-17. That program was going to be canceled, and I'm the one who took the lead and saved it. I saved the F-18E and F when I was in the House. I've been fighting for a strong defense since 1993. In the 1990s, I was responsible for $40 to $50 billion more going into the defense budget than President Clinton recommended. I've got a very strong record on defense, and I'm happy to go to the voters with a comparison of my record and experience on that issue with my opponents. Yeah, well, she should check out the speeches I've given the Senate floor and the points I made in the Armed Services Committee when I've been critical of the administration for not increasing defense spending enough. I've given long speeches about that ever since 1993, and not just with this administration, but with the last one as well, in addition to participating in the hearings and working on all the other issues, to putting out legislation regarding the Navy, to fighting for airlift, to fighting for programs like the F-18, like the Future Combat Systems. I've got a very strong record in support of defense, and as I said, I'm happy for the voters to take a look at at both of our records on defense and compare that and make a decision based on that. I think that the question comes down to whose record shows they can make the system in Washington work on behalf of the people of Missouri. And I made the point over and over again today that I have passed, on a bipartisan basis, but with my leadership, important legislation that's making a difference for this state as well as for this country. And I've also made the point that she and I differ on opinions, and the voters are going to take a look at that. The fact of the matter is that across a wide front of the war on terror, my opponent takes positions that are positions of weakness. She does oppose the terrorist surveillance program. She told Steve Kraske that she didn't have your name right in the tip of my tongue, Steve, and I apologize for that in the debate, but she told Steve she thought the program was illegal. This is a program that goes back to Jimmy Carter. She told a group in Paris of her supporters that she was deeply concerned with the fact that we haven't given habeas corpus rights to capture terrorists, and that's the right to sue people, the people who are incarcerating them because they're not getting things like high-speed internet. She said the New York Times release of classified information was the right thing to do because she didn't think that she thought the terrorists knew about it already. I mean, in area after area, she's taken positions that I believe are positions of weakness. She's doing the same thing in North Korea now. To sit down with Kim Jong-il on a bilateral basis is to give him exactly what he wants and exactly what he's hoping to get by his saber rattling. So, I mean, and I've contrasted other issues as well. We talked about ethanol today and who supports that and who doesn't, the prescription drug bill. And we're going to continue talking about those issues for the next 4 weeks. I've asked thousands of questions in Armed Services hearings. I mean, I've been on the Armed Services Committee going back to 1992, asked questions, made points, and made a difference, Terry. I mean,
well, so was she inaccurate when you...
Well, the point she's making is unquestionably inaccurate. Now, are there hearings where I have not asked a question? Sure. There's hearings where every committee member doesn't ask a question. But as I said before, Terry, if we want to go before the people in terms of our respective records on defense, I'm quite willing to do that.
Senator, you said during one of your responses that D.C. government is a junior partner. Now, how does that jive with your support of legislation such as the Patriot Act and fairly large spending, which I would think of more as big government type action?
I think I got a pretty good record in terms of spending. Now, I'm a believer that what the government should do, it should do well and vigorously. And I supported, for example, a substantial bond issue for transportation infrastructure. I talked about that tonight. But that's not inconsistent with believing that what's important about our society is, in the first instance, this is what our people build on their own. And this is a difference between me and my opponent. And I say this in good faith. I mean, I think that she puts a bigger emphasis on what the government does. But I'm a strong supporter of vigorous government where it should be vigorous, and whether it's transportation infrastructure, whether it's fighting terrorism. And all we did with the Patriot Act was empower the government to use the same tools in fighting terror that it already has in fighting the mafia and organized crime. I think it's the minimum that we need to be doing. And I did try and make the point again tonight that, look, whatever you think about what's going on in Iraq and Afghanistan, we are confronting a group of people who are out to get us. They're highly adaptive. They understand information technology. We have got to get intelligence to beat them. And that's why positions of weakness in those areas are so dangerous to the security of the people.
Senator, it said that all politics is local. However, is there a drag from the Republican Party at the national level, the Foley affair?
Well, I don't know about the Foley affair. This is a midterm election in a president's second term. And that's probably not the the ideal time to run. At the same time, I just am a believer watching this year in and year out that people make a difference or make their decision by and large based on the candidates they have in front of them in a comparison of those records. And I'm not saying that, you know, because this is a cycle I'm in. I just think that that's generally how they make their judgments, because they understand that, you know, the people that they elect, particularly in the Senate, are going to be in office at least 6 years. So whichever one of us gets elected is going to be there at least 4 years after George Bush is gone. There's going to be whole sets of new issues, and they need somebody who believes in their values and fights for their interest.
Can you elaborate on what you mean by aggressively?
Use techniques, of course, short of torture, you know, the infliction of severe physical pain. We've got a history in this country, a good history, of treating even the guilty about 1,000 times better than they treat the innocent. And I want to sustain that tradition, although I'll tell you, not because I think that, you know, if we treat the terrorists with kid gloves, they're going to treat our prisoners that way. I think that's very, very naive, but because that's just who we are. But short of that, yeah, we use whatever techniques we think will get actionable intelligence to protect the American people. And if that's changing their meal schedules or playing them loud music or having a female interrogator when that bothers them, yeah, I think we ought to do that. And my first interest is the civil liberties and the freedom and the security of the American people. I'll make another point here, and I make this in good faith to people who feel differently. To the extent that we are less secure from a terrorist threat, or, God forbid, another one actually succeeds, then all of us lose civil liberties. I mean, there's liberties on both sides of this equation. I mean, we can't fly as freely as we could fly 5 or 6 years ago. So there is a connection between protecting our safety and protecting our freedoms. Well, I think what you have to have is balance and perspective. And you take the National Intelligence Estimate. They said, look, if we complete the mission in Iraq, it's a tremendous victory for us and a tremendous setback for the terrorists. And that's true of all the different fronts of the war on terror. Afghanistan, you know, foreign interrogations, homeland defense, terrorist surveillance. It's true for all of them. And if we fail in any of them, it's also true that that's a setback. So you have to have a perspective. We have too high a level of sectarian violence now. It's not acceptable in the short term. It's not sustainable in the long term. But we have removed Saddam Hussein. We don't have an Iraq that's threatening its neighbors or starting a nuclear weapons program or competing with Iran to sponsor terror. Those are all solid benefits. We have, to this point, trained up a pretty capable 130,000 person army. We've got to size that army properly. We've got to season it. When we do that, you see, the part of the mission that requires large numbers of American troops is basically over. Now, Maliki is still going to have to reconstruct the neighborhoods. He's going to have to come to some kind of political accommodation with some of the warring factions. He's going to have to face down the militia. But he'll need American support, some money, some logistical support, but he won't need large numbers of American troops to do that. So what I say to people, just keep perspective. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, this level of violence is unacceptable, but there's a lot of benefits we've realized from the mission so far, too. Nobody's asked me why I forgot to bring a pen with me today. And don't tell me you didn't see it, either. You didn't see it? Uh-oh. I had a guy from the front row throw me a pen. I forgot to bring a pen. That's being prepared. Go ahead.